that sequence.
If I could put a number of questions, and just if I could get the replies. I know we're getting all tired. Just to put this in context, what was the Northern portfolio acquired for?
The $2.5 billion. Where are you taking that from? $2.5 billion, Deputy.
What was the?
Is it pounds or
sterling?
Sterling. Yeah, sterling.
Sterling.
Yeah. I'm sorry. That specific piece of information isn't in the report, so we will clarify.
Okay.
We will clarify.
What was? Is it called the par value at the time? What were we losing at that point?
The par value of the loans that were in focus on the 31st of December 2013 was 4.6 billion. When the loans were acquired, obviously things happened thereafter.
Okay. At the time they were acquired, what was the value? What was the loss to the taxpayer at the acquisition?
I'm sorry, that's the figure that we think is 2.5.
That's what was paid for them.
Yes.
Yeah, but what was the value of them? What was written off?
When they acquired them?
Yes. I understand it was billions.
The question you're asking is the loans that NAMA took over from the respective banks had a value or a figure in the banks of 4.6.
Okay, thank
when NAMA was taking them over, which is severely discounted to approximately 2.5,
okay.
There was a massive discount. And the loss.
Yeah.
Which
we have reported on previously, obviously not specifically
I just want the context for what
portfolio.
We're talking about.
But certainly the write-down was, I think on average, was 57%.
Okay. And then it comes to the point of sale.
Yes.
And we have already impairment figures on top of that. You said we're about a 480 million or something impairment figures where it comes down further.
Yes.
And then without any valuation a price of 1.3 billion is put on it, and then you come forward and say we've now lost in addition probably 190. That's the context.
At the 31st of December the forecast carrying value was just under 2 billion.
Okay. Now, in relation
with impairment already taken out.
In relation to the poor quality, and this has been mentioned, by NAMA, the poor quality of the loans. Now, I have we've all got these briefing papers to the Minister for various meetings in Northern Ireland, and the briefing papers refer to 70% of the Northern portfolio being complete property and income producing.
Yes, it was income producing. Not every asset.
I understand.
But there was, as I said, a rent roll in 2013 of 100 million. And for 2014, the cash flows were showing rent and other non-disposal receipts of about 88 million.
Okay. And of that portfolio, we had everything from offices, and the breakdown has been given from offices to shopping centres. I think there were 24 shopping centres and so on. And it was income producing.
Okay. Yes, many of the assets were income producing.
In relation to Lazard, and I asked when I questioned you first what was the fee given, and it was repeated, I think, by Deputy Kelly. The fee was 4-point-something million.
About 4.3 million.
And they were brought in for a limited period of time. Have you a view on the level of money that was paid to them, or have you a role in assessing that?
I think just maybe two comments that I would make. Project Tower, which was sold at the same time in a structured way and following the guidelines. The fee basis was similar because the fee depends on the value. It's a proportion, but the rates were similar. When you compare it to Project Arrow, which was the following year, the fee rates were significantly less.
Okay, but just in relation to Lazard, they had less work to do, presumably, than the two projects you're comparing them to.
Yes.
They didn't carry out a valuation.
Absolutely.
They had a limited role compared with the others.
Yes.
So therefore, have you a view or have you a role in assessing the value for money of that money given over to Lazard?
Well, I mean, I've pointed out in the report that this was the basis of the payment. They were the terms agreed. They got what they were contracted to pay, and I've drawn attention to the fact that comparing the volume of work, that the fee was significantly higher for Lazard.
In relation to, you said that NAMA could have done more, should have done more. Would that be wrong to say should, in relation to the conflict of interest and following up when it was highlighted? Should they have gone to the guards? Should they have reported to the guards? Even retrospectively as they came along, should they have reported?
In a way, it's difficult to answer that. It would depend on if they had made inquiries and found further information, then it might have led them to evaluating whether they should or shouldn't report the matter. The kinds of things that, and the places where they might have got more information was perhaps from Mr. Cushnan, but also perhaps from PIMCO and perhaps from well, I think those two sources.
Okay.
Yeah.
In relation to PIMCO, and we acknowledged earlier that they were in the race earlier on. In fact, they were in the race from very early in 2013, meeting with northern politicians. Were you aware of that, going back to March or April? Well before the unsolicited connection was made with NAMA.
I think the notes indicate that which we've put together here, it indicates that when they were disclosing to NAMA that there had been a success fee arrangement, they talked about negotiations having commenced in April 2013.
Okay.
So at least at that point, NAMA knew that there was some negotiation around that period, which would have predated the initial letter from Brown Rudnick.
And then in relation to the experts that came forward, there were 4 experts, is that correct? That you set out here in your report?
Yes.
One of them was Lazard, given an expert. They were the advisors to PIMCO. When Cushman and Wakefield, they were advisors to PIMCO, were they, when they came forward and gave an expert opinion?
Cushman and Wakefield were advisors to
PIMCO.
I think to Cerberus or Fortress.
They were advisors to one of the bidders.
Then they moved to Fortress.
I beg your pardon?
To PIMCO, and then they moved to Fortress.
And then so there's two of the expert advice brought forward by NAMA, isn't that right? But they were already conflicted, those 2 experts.
In terms of the comments that they were providing for the purposes of this report, it was a general inquiry that they were asked to comment on.
All right.
It's general advice, it's not specific, and I don't believe that they would have had either the book, the evidence that we sent, or a draft of the report. They couldn't have had a draft of the report in January 2016. So they were making general comments.
General comments. And you've already said you didn't have a difficulty.
And I don't have a difficulty with what's said.
And just finally, Chair, then in relation to, you noted in your report that this was a strategic change. It was a fundamental change in policy, isn't that right? That they decided
in relation to Northern Ireland.
The Northern Ireland. And in fact, again, when I look at the briefing notes, and when I look at the minutes, and when I look at what was on the website for the Northern Ireland Advisory Committee, repeatedly it was pointed out that the Northern politicians did not want fire sales. NAMA reassured them repeatedly that they were going on a very careful basis. Isn't that correct?
That's my understanding.
And then suddenly there's a change of policy. Would you concur with the word suddenly, or?
It was within a short period there was a change when they saw the opportunity that presented.
A fundamental change in policy?
A significant change of policy, yes.
Okay. And there's evidence that they were selling off, I think by 2012 they had sold 100 million worth of property. So there was movement in the market?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then on...
And other sales were ongoing. And they were projecting sales, significant sales in 2014.
Okay. And then on page 70 of your report, there's an extract from the European real estate loan sales market in February 14. And they talk about the market going up. And they talk about that there's more interest now from investors in smaller packages, isn't that right?
Yes, the reason that I included that was to give a flavour of what neutral observers felt was the situation at the time when the the Project Eagle sale was proceeding.
So that's a positive report in relation to the market.
It's basically saying that there are more people coming, more investors coming into the market. They're looking for different kinds of offers, and that significant growth. That it was a market that was heating up effectively.
Okay. And on that point, then, and on page 133, in the, I think they're the board. They are. The 10th of October NAMA board meeting, and just into page 3 of that, on page 133, we have PIMCO acknowledging that the Northern Irish economy has bottomed out.
Yes.
And then they go on to say that they wanted exposure to capitalise on future growth and recovery. So they're anticipating future growth and recovery, and they're anticipating selling off the what they bought. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
And they're anticipating selling off that relatively quickly. Isn't that right?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
To make a profit.
Well, inevitably they're in it to make a profit.
And just in relation to that then, and I'm finishing, Chair, that's going back then totally against what I've read here in relation to the briefing documents, that there would be no fire sale, that they would look in terms of the northern economy and suiting the northern economy. And they also acknowledged that 2/3 of the debtors were working with them. Now, there was a comment here that the debtors, referring to NAMA, that the debtors were not working with them. But in the briefing documents, they acknowledge that A, the property is completed, 2, it's income producing, and 3, 2/3 of the debtors are working actively with NAMA.
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
and so we have that, and then we have this extraordinary decision to sell off, change policy, and sell off in a portfolio that has a probable loss to the taxpayer of 190 million, in addition to all the other losses that the taxpayer has.
On to Deputy